Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Sugar Mama's Fire Play podcast. I am financial planner Canna Campbell. A quick reminder before we jump into this morning's podcast, and that is, please remember that all of my content, my YouTube videos, my blog posts, my podcasts, and anything you might see on my Instagram account is always general advice only. It is never personal advice and it is never product advice. Should you ever think, oh, that sounds really interesting, I want to learn more, I want to see if I could use that in my financial situation, that is when I recommend you always reach out to a qualified and licensed financial planner. All right, let's get cracking.
Your body is an investment, not an expense. This is one podcast that you cannot afford not to listen to. Why? Because we're talking about the most valuable, the most important investment you own. That is you. Think about it. Say you're 25 years old and you're planning on working till age 65. And let's say that you're going to earn an average salary of $100,000 a year over the next 40 years. And I'm not going to even factor in inflation here. That means over the next 40 years, you're going to earn over $4 million. Now, unless you've got personally own an asset worth $4 million, and if you do, that's great. At this stage today, you are your most important, valuable investment. Your ability to get up each day with strength and resilience and longevity and go to work and work at your optimal level to get the most out of your day. And of course, see your friends, have a lifestyle, exercise, travel, connect with people is all boils down to your health and well-being. So today I want to talk to you about how to invest in your health, how to get the maximum return on the food, the nutrition, what you put in your body so that you can get the best out of your health and well-being and live a long, happy and enjoyable life with balance. So today I'm chatting with Leila Lutz from the podcast channel, The Body Never Lies. Leila, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with us about health, about nutrition, about vitamins, about getting the most out of our bodies, our minds, and our well-being.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Canna. It's an honour, honestly. And I think that, I'm really excited about today's topic because I believe that health has become something that a lot of people feel is out of reach for them because it's an expensive thing. And I'm here to challenge that thought and help people think about exactly what you're talking about, investing in your health rather than spending money on your health.
It's so important, I think, this subject matter, because I often see on social media people posting about their frugal hacks. And quite often I will see people posting all the groceries they've bought, on sale, on special. And whilst that's great to save money, quite often I look at the food that they've bought and it's, a lot of highly processed food. And this is my bugbear with food is, for example, at the moment, Woolworths have Tim Tams on special. They're half price, and you can get a packet of chocolate Tim Tam biscuits for $1.82. Yet a organic banana is 70 cents each. So if I want to buy a bunch of bananas, it's going to cost me realistically almost $5. Yet a packet of Tim Tams is $1.80. It's no wonder we're getting things so wrong and we're gravitating towards the cheap, poor quality food to save money. There's a better way of doing this, and I can't wait to pick your brain around this, but it just seems so wrong. Before we launch into it, I want to just let everyone know Leila's qualifications, because on social media, there are a lot of people who claim to be experts but don't actually share their qualifications. And I'm not saying that these people don't know what they're talking about, but I think it's really important to look at the science, to look at the research, to have the right training and education and knowledge behind you to be able to talk about this stuff. Just like as I am as a qualified financial planner, I'm qualified to talk about money. Leila, would you mind sharing everyone, obviously, your background and your qualifications and training?
Yeah, sure. I have been a health and performance coach for 17 years now. So I've been working with people with nutrition and exercise for all of that time. And I studied mostly with the Czech Institute in San Diego, but then I've moved away from that and I'm studying functional endocrinology. I think the Czech Institute gave me a really good foundation of what is holistic, healthy living in terms of food, but now I've gone much deeper into it, understanding biology and physiology with food. And I think this is really important because, like you said, there's a lot of people talking about what is healthy and what's not. I think it's not only qualifications, it's also experience and it's also individualization. So it's really important, I think, to understand that everyone's different. So when you come and work with me, we do lots of extensive logging and measuring of your physiology. So I'm looking for specific changes that your body's going to have in response to the food, and that your food, that I've never prescribed food for one person that's the same as another person. Everyone's completely individual. And the other thing that I'm really big on with my work is understanding that the body is a holistic being. So our emotional stress has a huge effect on our physiology. So I'm really into treating the person, not just the symptoms that they have. So if we're constantly living with the burden of financial stress and I don't help a person through that, so say refer them to you so they can get, more abundant and they can let go of that stress, then I'm never going to be able to help them with their health, because the stress does quite a lot to our physiology as well. So there's looking at evidence as well, and I actually talk about this with a podcast with Kira Sutherland, a nutritionist. We talk a bit about this, and that's going to drop this season, is that evidence can only go so far as well. So we can read the evidence and we can investigate it and think about how we apply it, but we need to look at the client standing in front of us and go, does this actually apply to them? And a big thing I think that your audience will be interested to know is that we've been talking about, as most nutritional evidence is done on men, and so it doesn't apply to women.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why is that? That just doesn't seem right.
Men are much easier to study, so that becomes cost effective because men can all be the same. So if I was going to put women in a study, I would either have to put all the women on the pill to make them the same hormonally. There's a whole ethical issue behind that, and the pill changes your physiology, or I would have to study them for a much longer period of time.
Okay.
So men are easier to study because they're all the same. I'm saying that in air quotes, they're all the same, and also they make their hormones every day, so we can measure their physiology on a daily basis for 6 weeks, and that's the end of the study. Also, the people who are studied are young as well. So often college students who are doing it for money or don't have a lot of other stress in their life. So I think the carryover from studies to real life is not, very good. And I also think as well, a lot of nutritional studies, especially around weight loss, are done on morbidly or seriously obese people. And it's really easy to get really overweight people to lose weight. It's not so easy to get people who want to lose 5 kilos to lose weight.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so it's the context has to be understood of the study and the financial implications and what goes into the study. It's a whole other podcast in itself, really.
Yeah. Okay, well, why is food so expensive? Why is healthy food so expensive?
I think this is the best question to start with, Kanna. And I think that this is something I spend a lot of time explaining to people, because we really have to have a connection as to why we're putting money towards something. So when you're talking about Tim Tams or any kind of packet food, one of the biggest things that makes it so cheap is that it's very controllable and it has a long shelf life. So the cost to the company from waste is not going to be there, and it can be, it's very controllable in that sense. Whereas bananas, I can only have them out for a couple of days and then I have to get rid of them. They're not sellable anymore. So it's very expensive. It's also fresh produce is expensive as well because it is very susceptible to issues with climate. So, for instance, bananas are a great example. In the early mid-2000s in Australia, we had huge floods in Queensland, and the cost of bananas went through the roof because all the farmers who were producing bananas had serious issues with their crops. So all of a sudden, bananas became really rare and became really expensive. So a packet of Tim Tams is really easy to control the manufacturing process of that, and it's really easy to meet the supply and demand. So bananas, it's very difficult to control that. So the other thing we've got to think of as well is that I can make all the Tim Tams the same, but I can't make all the bananas the same. So all the bananas that don't look the way consumers, the supermarkets want them, they all get thrown in the bin. So the waste of fruit and vegetables, fresh produce, is really expensive, and waste costs money. Like in Australia, we actually transport a lot of our waste to other countries for them to deal with it, or we have to burn it off ourselves. All of those things cost money. So it's also, if you think about meat and things like that, and grains, especially Australia, we trade a lot of these things. So the price of those products is going to be heavily influenced by trade as well. So I think in Australia we're having issues with our trade agreements with China. Beef is one of our biggest exports to China. So Australia should expect to see a huge change in the cost of meat if we are not exporting meat anymore, if that makes sense. I'm not an economist, but I think it's really good to know why food is so variable in cost.
I always say to people, you cannot afford to get sick. As often, when we're working on our financial goals, it's easy to, as we're juggling everything, to let our health slip. So we say, oh, look, I'm going to work an extra shift and not worry about going to the gym, or to save a bit of money off my budget this week, I'm going to have, I'm going to cheat and have a chocolate bar instead of having like a healthy salad for dinner because it's cheaper. I mean, I'll save more, which I can put more towards my credit card debt or towards my savings or whatever it might be. When I listen to this, I'm like, stop. You can't afford to get sick, because whilst that might seem like saving you time or money or convenient right now, the cost of getting sick is astronomical, because if you get sick, you've got to have time away from work. You've got to go and spend money at a doctor or spend even more money seeing a specialist. You've then got to pay for medication and treatment. You've also got time out as you go through recovery or a rehabilitation process. And then, of course, there's the cost to our mental health and the mental health of the people around us. As we watch things can sometimes spiral out of control, or we're not able to work on our goals. We have to park those goals for the time being as we recover and get better again. So it's really important that when we're working on our financial goals, the goal of our health and well-being is just as important. We should never, ever, to the detriment of our health and well-being, prioritize our financial goals. They go hand in hand. Now, in a modern day world with tight budgets, with the stresses of the world of COVID and redundancies, lockdowns, how do you budget a healthy diet in your family?
Well, I think the really important thing is, like, when coming back to what you're always talking about, Canna, is budgets and financial goals. So one of my financial goals is to be able to spend quite a significant amount of money on food. It's actually a goal in and of itself. And I think a lot of people forget to put that in as a goal. So, they'll just think of, I need to cut out food and save money on food, but don't actually go, well, one of my financial goals is to be able to eat really well and look after myself. So for us, that's the first mindset piece that you have to think about. The second thing is budgeting, and always working out how much you spend on food and reassessing if you should be spending that much amount of money on food, and changing for different times in your life. So it's not a fixed thing. It changes with different things in your life. So my first tip to always people is, 1, to budget, but 2 is to have a shopping list and a meal plan. So we waste so much money on food, and I'm sure everyone who's listening can have the experience. If you go to the supermarket when you are hungry and you have no idea what you are going to cook for dinner, this is when you are going to spend the most amount of money on food. So in our family, we share the cooking. My partner does most of the shopping. He likes shopping. I don't like shopping. But he does most of it. So we share. So we have this constant communication. We sort of have a plan that we follow week to week. What's for dinner?
Like a food plan.
We eat all the leftovers, and a food plan. And we don't go outside of that food plan. Now, we're both really good cooks, so we don't have to plan too much because we're very creative. But I find, so I can make up lots of things from leftovers, so there's never any leftovers. But if you are not as creative or in love with cooking as I am, I really suggest that you get some recipes and have a meal plan and stick to it. And always as well make enough for leftovers for lunch the next day.
Yeah.
It is always cheaper to make your own lunch and to take your own lunch to work than it is to buy lunch out, for many reasons that we can go into if you want. And sometimes it can appear that eating lunch out can be cheaper. I was in the city the other day. I had an unexpected meeting in the city, and I went to the food court in the Westfield, and I was actually standing there going, wow, I actually can't eat as nutrient dense or as much food as I would if I was at home for the money that I thought in my head I would have to spend. So I was quite surprised. So I find one of the reasons why people don't eat enough food or they don't eat nutrient dense food is because it's just too hard to get a takeaway for the money that you want. So I was actually quite shocked. It was a good reminder for me. So I hope with COVID everyone's now eating more lunch that they've made at home because they've been at at home.
And the
They
good
got
thing
into
about
the habit of taking their lunch to work.
Yeah, look, the good thing about I find with taking your lunch, from your leftovers, it exercises portion control, because so many times you're like, oh, there's only a little bit left in the dish. I'll just eat all that up, so it doesn't go to waste. And you end up eating a really heavy dinner and going to bed, feeling bloated and lethargic. Whereas if you go, you know what, instead of eating and gorging on that extra food, I'm just going to put it in a glass Tupperware container and I'll eat it for lunch the next day. And I think I can't stress how helpful it is for me personally, having 4 or 5 dishes that I know how to make off the top of my head that are really healthy and really simple for those nights where I'm really tired and I'm tempted to order Uber Eats, or I'm tempted to just cook something that's really carby and not that healthy for me. And it might be something really simple as baked eggs, or it might be something really simple as scrambled eggs, or just the leftover chopped up vegetables in my fridge and just throw them in the oven for 30 minutes with some salt and pepper and olive oil and eat that as a warm roasted salad. Like, it's just having, I think I completely agree with you, having 4 or 5 dishes or meals that you know how to make. You don't have to think about reading ingredients or following instructions, particularly when you're tired. Once you can just go into autopilot and do it and give yourself a healthy meal is really, really important for those times where your energy levels are flat or your brain cells are just disintegrating.
I think so. It's so important as well, Canna, because then you're not going for things like just having toast for dinner or having a bowl of cereal for dinner, or they're just not. There's just not enough nutrition in those kinds of things for people. And then the onset, the cost of doing that, which we'll talk about in a minute, is really long term. So if a few things that you can make really quickly, like you're saying, like an omelette is awesome with some veggies, or but also the other thing that I do when I cook, so there will be 2 meals a week that I will cook that will be a batch cook. And so my other tip would be to have a day or some dedicated time once per week where you do some food prep for the week. So I will batch cook 2 meals. So it might be a curry or a stew or something like bolognese. And they're things that I can cook in bulk. So I'll cook enough literally for like 10 or 12 people. I will portion some up for the freezer, and then we'll have some for leftovers. So I don't have to cook as many times during the week. And also, if I can't be bothered to cook, or I've forgotten to organise something for the day, I don't have to tip into, like you were talking about with Tom, tip into the lifestyle account and spend money on Uber Eats. I can actually just go to the freezer and know that there's pre-prepared meals there for me. It's such an easy thing to do. So just pick 2 things. And then also on the weekend, I will pre-prepare things like root vegetables. So I'll roast a whole tray of root vegetables. So I've got healthy carbohydrates that I can throw into a salad, or I can have with some leftover meat or, whatever, but it's all pre-prepared. And then I have all of it organised in containers in the fridge. So I mostly work from home, but this means when I'm busy and I don't want to stop and make food, I can just quickly grab things out of the containers and reheat them very quickly.
I also think having dishes that are 1 or 2 people sizes, because sometimes I might have like a big lasagna or a big piece of meat in the freezer, and I'll come up with the excuse, I don't want to defrost that whole amount of food because it might go to waste and I may not use it all. And then again, I'll use it as an excuse to order or to cheat or eat something unhealthy. Having that portion size, like, where it's 1 person or 2 people, and writing it on the container so that well, look, it's okay, I'm not wasting anything. I'm going to freeze this. I'm going to defrost this. It's going to be enough to feed me and get me through, tonight without having to order something. Like, just investing a bit of your time up front to plan and prepare and be organised really does save you money immediately and well into the long run, and it creates a really healthy habit system. So the idea of coming up with the excuse of ordering Uber Eats just completely vanishes.
I actually portion things up for the size for my daughter. So she's only 3. And so I have individual ones. So if she has a friend, like if I have a girlfriend who says, oh, can you pick up my daughter too and have her for dinner and stuff, I can actually defrost something for her and her friend in portion sizes, so I'm just always prepared. And I actually never ever get to the stage where I go, oh, I don't have anything for dinner. I just never ever get to that stage.
You have a really interesting, and I love this, your analogy around money and a bank account and energy and food. And I love the way you think about this, because it's a really nice way of rethinking your attitude and approach to what you choose to put in your body, just like I use the analogy of credit cards and carbohydrates. Would you be able to share with everyone the way that you look at the connection of money and food and energy?
Absolutely. I'd love explaining this to clients, especially to people who are trying to save money on food by eating eating less. And I just want to give a little background as well and context. I actually came from a family where my mum, was reliant on Centrelink payments or social security payment. And she became really ill when I was in high school. And so it was actually my job to stick to the budget and do all our food shopping and all our cooking. And so I can really empathise with people who are living that week to week and having to, sort their food out that way. So I just wanted to give a bit of context for people. But one thing I think is really important to understand is food is energy. And we need a surplus of energy to be able to function. So let's just say, for instance, I want to live out of my everyday account. I don't want to go into my savings account, and I definitely don't want to use my credit card because I'm going to start paying interest. So when I skip meals or I eat bad food, sometimes I go into savings, which is like an emergency thing. But if I am going too much into my savings or I'm eating bad food too much, I actually start going in using my credit card. And I want you to think of eating poorly or not eating enough food is actually accumulating interest, because the effects of not eating well or skipping meals or that's the accumulation of that can sometimes take a year or more to rear its nasty head. And we all know what happens if we don't pay back our credit card bill on time for 12 months.
Oh, yeah. Adds up and gives us a nasty shock.
Nasty shock. So we're a conglomerate of cells, basically. We're all born from a single cell that's split into more cells and more and more and more. And every day our body is creating more and more cells. And to do that, we need actually a lot of energy. So there's no doubt about it. Evidence shows that being in a calorie restriction will help you lose weight. But being in too much of a calorie restriction over a long period of time, or just too much of, skipping meals or eating bad food, we actually start to go into that credit card. Okay. So we actually require energy, even just to lie still and sleep and breathe. So we want to get our metabolism up, so that while we're lying there resting, we're actually using about 1,600, 1,800 calories as a sedentary woman. So what that means is while we're lying there and sleeping, our body is creating new hormones, it's fixing our digestive system, it's growing our hair, our nails, it's making more cells, it's, putting the collagen back in our skin, it's helping us with our fertility. So if I start, going, I'm just going to eat 1,200 calories or 1,500 calories, my body's going to go, oh my God. And then it's going to go, okay, well, this is getting expensive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a decision about what's important. So it might say, well, you know what, your hair's not so important, so I'll just stop growing your hair. So women might start to see their hair falling out, or their nails become brittle. And then they might start having fertility issues, because it's actually a really expensive process making our hormones. And, what's more expensive is when you haven't got enough food, is having a baby and needing more food. So I'll just turn off some hormones. And then the recovery process from doing this, because the body's so smart and it goes, well, I'm just going to slow everything down so we're not expending so much. To get our cells back to regenerating at the speed that we need them to function can actually take a long period of time. So some of the women I work with are in this process of metabolic damage, and it takes them 18 months to get their cells functioning properly again. So, and the effects that you might see of this are really difficult menopause or, osteoporosis. I've just started working with a client who's been dieting her whole life, and she's in menopause now, and she actually is so deficient in minerals that she's having issues with bones and her teeth. She's having problems with her teeth, and the dentist wants to put in an implant, and her jaw won't accept the implant because her bone mineral density is so poor. Now, she wouldn't have thought about that when she was 20 years old, but now she's in her 50s. She's like, oh, my God, my teeth are falling out, but I have to get dental implants, and I can't even have dental implants. So we don't think about the cost of not investing in our health until it's too late.
Wow. Well, if anyone who's listening to that, the thought of losing your teeth, I hope that makes you realise that you have got to invest in your health and well-being.
Every single cell in your body, all of your skin, your joints, your ability to move, your flexibility, everything is dependent on the quality of food that you eat and eating enough of good quality food.
So cutting corners and allowing your body to cut corners can come at a huge expense well into the long run. It's funny, the other day my dad came over to say to me, I think you're working too hard, you're going at 100 miles an hour, and if you don't stop and take time for yourself, not only are you going to collapse, but you run the risk of collapsing and falling so far that you aren't able to pull yourself back up together again. And it was such a wake-up call for me, and realizing, just to say no to things, to slow down, to look at the way I choose to spend my time, who I choose to spend my time with, and of course, the way that I choose to look after my body, both from looking at the food that I put into my body and the way that I exercise and train. If you ever have, a setback or whatever it might be, you have the strength and resilience to quickly heal again and recover and get back on with life again, or of course, avoid collapsing in the first place. And it really does come down to, what we put in is what we get out, just like with our own financial goals. If we put time and energy working on our financial goals, it will show in the proof, will be in the evidence. The money that we've got in our savings account, the money we've got in our investment portfolio, the amount of passive income we grow. Our bodies are just the same. When it comes to, if I'm on a budget, imagining I'm a student or study, I might have HECS debt or help debt. I'm studying full time, but I've also got, let's say, a part-time job, and money is tight. And this is the reality for most people and families at this stage. Where is it worth investing, and where can we afford to cut corners without jeopardizing our health?
This is a great question, and I can really empathise with this because when I was in university, I was living at home and I couldn't afford a lot of things either. So I think that if you can stick to eating fresh fruit and vegetables, and then after that we'd eat canned and we'd eat frozen, but making sure that it's about fruit and vegetables is our basis of our food, and eating eggs and meat and dairy. If we can just stick to those things, that's what I would invest in. So stay away from anything that's packaged and processed, because there's no nutrient value in it. So if you think about you want to get your nutrients from food that your body can break down really quickly. And if you think about packaged food, it might be cheaper, but it sits on the shelf for a really long time and it doesn't go off. So what happens is in your body, when you eat something, your body has to break down the food. It essentially rots the food with all the acids in your stomach to get,
I feel
get the nutrients out of the food. But if something doesn't rot on its own, right, it's been chemically changed so it doesn't rot, it's a huge job for your body to rot it and get the nutrients out of it. So I think it's really important to make sure you're investing in fresh food. So shopping online for us helps us stick to our budget, because we're not tempted at the grocery store by all the little shiny things,
the colours,
it means I can
packaging.
So shopping online and getting it delivered is really good. I remember how I talked about all the bananas that aren't the right size are thrown away. A lot of stores are now actually selling those. They're
I know, the odd bunch. I love it. I love it. And it's funny. I love avocados, and Apple loves to eat avocados, Rocco eat avocados. So whenever I find a vegetable or fruit that my kids will eat, I really focus on getting as much of that into them as possible. And there's my pet peeve is seeing an avocado going brown. I'm like, that is precious, high quality food that's going to waste. So when you see the odd bunch and you see avocados in the odd bunch, I'm so happy. I'm like cashing in on that. And you're right, more and more supermarkets, and they're often in the corner or right up the back, are the specials hidden away. But if you look for them, they're there. And also from an environmental perspective, we've got to make sure we consume those, because those normally get thrown out and add to the damage of our planet through the methane gas that they release and the chemicals that get released in the air. So we've got to make sure that as a community we embrace the odd bunch, the leftovers, the ones which are just, they might turn brown in a few days, but if we know that we're going to buy it and eat it quickly before it goes off, that's so much better for our planet, so much better for our wallets, and best of all, better for our bodies. Where would you invest? What do you think is no, you know what, don't compromise that, don't negotiate on that. This is what is worth investing in if you do have space in your budget.
I think that if you eat meat, because not everybody eats meat, but if you do eat meat, I would invest in eating grass-fed. Organic doesn't need, isn't always the way, but I'll make sure that's grass-fed and pasture-raised. One, because eating all the grains is toxic to us, but also that kind of farming is really bad for the environment. So if you, really get to know your butcher, get to join an animal share or something like that, and then I would invest, if you're thinking about organic versus non-organic, look, I think if you eat seasonally, for number one, because things that are in season are more cost effective, because things that aren't in season, they're frozen.
Yeah.
And so they have to pay the storage cost and then brought out and defrosted for us to eat. So pay attention to what's in season. And also have a look at the clean 13 and the dirty dozen. So you can just Google that. So that's a list of the things that are sprayed with the most chemicals. So definitely just stay away from that list. And the things that are not sprayed with that many chemicals. So you should invest your money in those organic products that are not on the dirty dozen.
I had a mother share with me a hack, which I thought was quite clever. She said when she can't afford to buy, and this mother was very sort of up to speed on her health and nutrition, she said when she can't afford organic fruit and vegetables, she soaks it in a little bit of, if I remember correctly, not white wine vinegar, but is it vinegar?
Apple cider vinegar is good. I use a couple of essential oils in mine. It will take the chemicals off that have been sprayed on it, but also you have to remember that the food that is not grown organically isn't as nutrient dense. So we'll take the chemicals mostly off the food. So I do highly recommend doing that. So you can just do it with apple cider vinegar.
Which is so cheap to buy.
Google veggie wash, like make your own vegetable wash. I use essential oils to do mine because obviously sometimes I just want something, like I'm having a dinner party and it's not in season, but I really want that on the menu, or I couldn't find it at the farmer's market. So I buy something non-organic. So wash it for sure in a veggie wash.
My mother has always said to me, like ever since I can remember as a little girl, always wash your fruit and vegetables before you eat it. She's had this theory, and it's obviously my mother doesn't have come back from any sort of nutrition background whatsoever, but she had this theory that it's making us immune to certain medication and antibiotics because of all the chemicals that we're putting in our bodies. And I have no idea whether that's correct at all, but it is so important. If we must clean the food before we put it into our bodies, so that we can also get the maximum return of that. The nutrition is not being diluted by all those nasty toxic chemicals.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's so important to keep your chemical load down, so not only with our cleaning products and our, self-care products, but with our food. Like it's another one of those things that accumulates and then we start paying interest on. So you can really focus on washing your fruit and vegetables if you can't afford organic, massive step forward if you can't afford organic. But also we should be washing our organic food as well, because like we forget that organic food has dirt on it, and in the dirt can be bugs and worms and parasites and things that shouldn't live in our bodies. So remember to wash your organic vegetables as well. I think the other thing I would say about saving money on food is knowing when your supermarket restocks, because they will have to replace. So the supermarket around the corner from us, we normally mostly buy online, but I always run out of things and have to run to the shop around the corner. Or like milk, for instance, you need to buy that fresh. So I know when the milk gets restocked. So I know when the milk goes on quick sale so they can get rid of it to make way for the new milk. So those things can save you a lot of money, because the use by date on things in the shop is really conservative. It's to save their face, and make sure there's no complications. So that's actually quite put before it actually does go off, if that makes sense. So you've always got a few days leeway. So I always buy things on quick sale to save money.
You can use your freezer as well. I mean, your freezer is like a time capsule.
Oh my goodness.
And the more you actually have in your freezer, the more energy and money off your energy bill you save, because the more food in there helps keep the other food frozen as well. So it works off each other.
Exactly. And I can't tell you how many things you can freeze. Like we freeze bananas. So if anything fruit is going off, I just freeze it and then I use it to make smoothies and things. Which can be really nutritious and quick in the morning if you don't have time for breakfast. Yeah. So, really question what you're throwing out. And our freezer, one of the best things we did for our family was invest in a deep freeze. So we have a huge freezer and we actually buy so many things in bulk. If you're working on your savings and you have a savings account, you'd actually borrow money from yourself, buy things in bulk and then pay it back to your savings account. And you save so much money. A lot of the places that I shop, and that's a good thing about shopping online, is you get newsletters and they'll have all the specials. And I go, well, this kind of produce is on special this month, so I'm going to bulk buy that and put it in the deep freeze.
Yeah. And it's amazing just investing a bit of a time up front in, as I said, planning and preparing and organising. And you it means that you are going to then stay within the boundaries of your budget and not jeopardize your health and well-being. When it comes to appliances, there's so many gadgets and gizmos, it's quite overwhelming. Which ones are worth getting? Do you have any cheat sheets? Gosh, you've got a whole range of different things out there. What would you recommend?
I would say for most people, I think they think when health is expensive, they also think that they have to have this really fancy kitchen with all these fancy things. And some of my clients, when I meet them, they're actually so overwhelmed with all the appliances in their kitchen. So my advice is to keep it simple, stupid. Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, with everything, and I will talk about supplements and superfoods about that as well in a minute. But my investments would be a slow cooker. You can get a slow cooker for around $100.
Actually, I have a spare slow cooker because when Tom and I moved house, we each had a slow cooker each. So if anyone would like a free slow cooker, please let me know. It's a really big one as well, so great for a family. So there you go. It's evidence that Tom and I do this. Slow cookers are amazing.
They are so amazing. So we use ours pretty much every day. We cook broths in it, curries in it. And also if you do eat meat, slow cooking meat actually breaks down a lot of the anti-nutrients in the meat and actually helps you get more of the good nutrients in meat. So it's healthy. It's a healthier way to eat as well. And you can also eat cheaper cuts of meat when you slow cook them.
Yeah.
So a slow cooker is a must-have. The other thing we just invested in recently was an air fryer, which is less than $100 because I can do all the root vegetables in it really quickly at like 20 minutes. I can cook root vegetables. So if you guys listening have kids, I make so many root vegetable chips because kids love chips.
It's such a great way to get healthy vegetables into kids.
Oh, I know, and it's 20 minutes. So when you're a busy mum, busy parent, it's a godsend. It's also 1 teaspoon of oil for enough root vegetables for 4 people. So, it's really keeping your fat consumption down. So even though I'm using coconut, which is a healthy fat, we still can't overeat our fats. The other thing I would suggest is to get a blender. Now you can get a really cheap one that just does smoothies and
like a NutriBullet or something.
I think ours is like $50. So it's not a NutriBullet because a NutriBullet is really expensive, but it's like that, and it was only $50. And the one I've had is about 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
So that's, it's really, really good. So, and then in terms of what I would really invest in, I would invest in good Tupperware.
Yeah.
So for taking to work, so we have, because you want them to be really sealed so that the air doesn't get into food. But this is also going to help you with your food prep and getting really organised. So all of our ones for home for the fridge are glass. And then the ones that we have to take to work and school lunchboxes and things are actually aluminium. So they're all really well sealed and keep food really fresh. And then for hot food, for taking to lunch, we each have a nice insulated lunchbox. So if you want to take hot or cold food to work. So you could basically have a slow cooker and an air fryer and a blender and be able to cook so many things. And that's only about $250 to set that up. And I actually was looking at the aluminium cookware at IKEA and it's great. I'm a huge advocate of getting rid of all of the Teflon in your house because it's toxic. And even cooking in iron, cast iron can actually give you iron overload. So if you just buy the aluminum cookware from IKEA, it's really cheap and it's fine. It's really fine. And then the other thing I would invest in is good knife, a good sharp knife, because everyone gets really angry and frustrated when they can't cook, when they can't chop things properly. So just get
and you
one
can't
really
chop things quickly as well.
Well, you can't, and also it's really dangerous to cut with blunt knives. So that would be my investment. Oh, and I would also invest in a water filter because our tap water is so full of rubbish, and we just have because we're renting at the moment, we just have a ceramic one that sits on the counter, and then we all have really good drink bottles that we fill up and take our water to school.
Is the filter from a kettle good enough or no?
The kettle actually boil the bacteria, but if you want to take out all the anti-nutrients, so depending on what research you've read, but I'm definitely not a fan of fluoride, and I've been taking the fluoride out of my water for over 20 years. The filter that we have takes the fluoride out. And things like chlorine and all of that stuff. So it's something I definitely invest in, especially if you have thyroid issues. Not having any fluoride in your water is really important. I don't have any fillings and I'm turning 40. So
Wow. And when it comes to investing in supplements and vitamins and so forth, what is worth getting? Do you just go with the standard, like one size fits all multivitamin, or do we need to sort of invest some time exploring exactly what our body needs? Like, again, that's another minefield and overwhelming confusion as to what is worth investing in. Also, can we go with the basic level, the supermarket level multivitamins, or do we have to go and get, the bioceutical products? Like, what are your thoughts on that, and where is it worth investing and where is it worth saving?
This is a whole topic in and of itself, so I'll try and give a summary. I think one of the problems with our health system is that we take a blood test, and the blood test will say, for instance, you're deficient in iron. And so the diagnosis will be, okay, cool, just take an iron supplement. And we don't actually understand the biological process in the body that means that we have too much iron in our blood, or not enough iron in our blood, for instance. And we also don't understand what foods we need to eat. And we also don't understand the implications of taking an iron supplement. So it's a bit of a Band-Aid approach, a bit of a this for that approach. So I'm not looking at the context of the person and why they might be iron deficient and what they need to do to get out of that. So for me, okay, if you're in a state where you're really depleted and you can't even think about eating healthy food, I would say that's an appropriate time to have supplementation and vitamins. But they're so expensive. The good ones are so expensive. And I can tell you that they really, if you do need to take them, it is best to invest in the good brands. The supermarket brands do nothing. I hate to say it, but they don't.
Really?
So the multis, my doctor was actually explaining it to me they don't have enough of the specific ones for you, and they can have too much of the other ones that you don't need. So I don't think multis are really helpful. So, for instance, with iron is copper dependent. So we actually need to have vitamin A and copper to be able to absorb iron into the cell. So most people aren't deficient in iron. They're actually deficient in copper and vitamin A. So a really simple solution for that is to eat some liver. And liver is so cheap, way cheaper than iron supplements, or you can get desiccated liver. So, I think it comes back to the context of understanding exactly why someone is deficient in something and of using supplements appropriately for a specific amount of time with the view to improve the root cause of the problem. So this is where you'll need to work with a nutritionist or someone, because otherwise you'll just be depending on that supplement forever. And really good supplements are really expensive. I've had clients come to me who are on hundreds of dollars a month of supplements, and they're eating some of them are eating healthily, but they're not eating enough food, or they're eating the wrong kind of combinations of food, or there's always a reason why they're deficient. And it's actually quite simple when you work with a professional to work out the reason. This could be actually an investment in your health, like going to see a financial planner and working out what your values are, and in terms of investments, could save you a huge amount of money by just investing in that one-on-one advice.
Yeah. And also it frees up the time in your space, because you get better, and then you don't need to, you have all the knowledge and the tools and the strategies to avoid it from ever happening again, and you can get on with your life, and you're not having to, brush backwards and forwards to appointments and spending money here and there, because you've invested upfront in the right way. And that, prescription without diagnosis can be very, very costly.
Oh, so costly. And a lot of vitamins and supplements are synthetic.
Yeah.
And they actually do damage to our body. And we can get an overload of that specific synthetic vitamin, which can cause another health problem in and of itself. So they're really something that you should do under the guide of a practitioner. And I think also when you work with a practitioner, should always question. So I don't prescribe any supplements or anything that I make any money off. And I think this is really important, because if I ever prescribe something for someone, it's truly in the best interest of that. And whereas I know a lot of nutritionists and naturopath and health practitioners actually have, as part of their protocol, a supplement process or a detox process, and they're actually making money off the products. And so they have to sell
multi-level program, like multi-level programs. Like it's just you're just being sold products.
Yeah, and I was looking at a health coaching course the other day that someone said to me, "Oh, should I do this health coaching course?" And I actually did some investigation, and I saw part of the protocol is this several $100 detox that every client has to do if you're a client of that health coach. So the guy who's teaching the course is making a huge amount of profit on all of these supplements and things like that. So, integrity goes a long way. My goal as a coach is to get you completely self-sufficient self-sufficient and not needing me or any products whatsoever. And,
I'm
not saying that I'm better than anyone else, but I think that health is it belongs to you. You shouldn't have to pay someone else to control it for you or so that you can have it. You pay someone to teach you so that you can go off and do it yourself. And I truly believe that you shouldn't really need any supplements or anything like that long term.
Leila, thank you so much. This has been so refreshing and so helpful and so insightful. Listening to your approach, your attitude, your knowledge, your experience with this, you really got me rethinking about food and about, I guess, even meat, because quite often I think sometimes where I go to save money is I cut meat down, but sometimes I think that's at my own cost because I'm actually someone who's deficient in iron. So I am so grateful for you taking your time today to share this with us. And for all the listeners right now, where can they find out more information about you? Where can they follow and see what you're cooking for dinner tonight? Where can they listen to your interviews with other experts in your field? How can we stay connected and listening to your valuable advice?
Oh, thanks, Canna. I've really enjoyed sharing this information today because it's absolutely my passion and purpose to make everyone get more connected with their body and listen to themselves and be more empowered with their health. So hence why I started the podcast, The Body Never Lies, and I'm interviewing experts all around the world and doing some solo episodes myself on helping you get more in tune with your body. The next series that's launching is all about demystifying all the hot topics because there's a lot of rubbish out there.
Yes, there is.
There's a lot of rubbish, and you can find me on Instagram at Leila Lutz, and I'm always cooking on there. I'm not very good at Instagram, and I'm trying to be inspired by Canna.
No, I love it also because it's honest, it's real, and I love seeing all the prep, and I love seeing all the beautiful meals you make. And I know that I can see where you're investing in food, and I can see where you're able to save money, and it's really inspiring. Please keep sharing with everyone what you're cooking, what you're making, and also I love seeing the healthy food that you feed your daughter. It's great because, just like we do for ourselves when we're tired and we go, right, fine, I'll have a bowl of cereal or a slice of toast for dinner. Quite often our children end up with the same meal, and that is not good enough. We've got to be obviously kind to ourselves and within reason, but if we're doing this too often, we've got to lead by example, just like we do with money as well for our future generation. Leila, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I will link in the podcast description box all of Leila's contact details so you can reach out to her and peek inside her world and see what she's eating and preparing and shopping and the way that she spends her money when it comes to investing in her health and well-being. All right, everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you get a spare moment, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a rating and a review. And of course, I will link my own social media accounts and hashtags down below. Ciao for now.